I'm just going to call the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners meeting agenda to order for the Harwich Water Department at 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. We have an executive session starting at 11:30. So the executive session is pursuant to GL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, water, wastewater superintendent. I need a motion to go into executive order.
So moved.
Second. Need a second, and I'll take a roll call vote. Hang on one second, sir. Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Noreen?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And sorry for myself. We're going to go into executive session. We just came out of executive session. We had a discussion and no action was taken. So Mr. Gallagher, public comments.
My only comment, I had a handout for you today to take a look at. I'm not asking for a response today. I think that's inappropriate. If I had a chance, it would have been in your packet or something like that, and then we could have talked about it.
Right.
But now you have it, and then you can decide in the future whether you want it to be an agenda topic, or you want me to come back and talk about it, or whatever.
Absolutely. Yep, we'll take a look at it, and
Okay, I can do that.
it'll definitely be on the agenda for our next meeting. I can guarantee you that.
Okay, now, my limitation on next meeting, if it's the last week of October, that's a no-no, I'm not around.
Okay. So what I can do is invite you to our next meeting. If you can't make it, you let us know so we can put it on the agenda so you can come back in.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, because I mean, I appreciate you taking the time to put that together. We'd like to have a discussion about it.
And then if you wanted my presentation to be in more detail, then there's some things that would help me in the meantime. That, for instance, I have a out-of-the-sky rate chart that I've dreamt up and so forth, but I don't have the figures in back of it to know exactly how that would work. Someone from the water department, I asked while you were out, I asked what data was generally available, and I found out if I had access to that data, my proposal could be a little bit sharper perhaps, and in a little more detail than this.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see what we can put together for you.
So if one of you would like to comment, call me after this or let me know how to proceed, I would be very happy.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Thanks for the time you spent.
And you left your contact info, your contact information? Is it on there?
No, it's not. Do you want my phone number?
You want to write it down so you don't have to advertise?
Yeah. Good thinking, Dan. And your email is the most common.
Email, yeah.
That's
I got two.
Okay.
One for you, and if you decide you want to, you can want to be on there.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Get it from Gary if we need it.
All right. Consent agenda for the meeting minutes of July 27th, August 25th, and September 14th will be postponed to our next meeting. Old business, 2022 special town meeting, wastewater, articles, discussion, and possible vote to support acquisition of property interest and appropriation of funds for Route 28 dry sewer project and Phase 3 wastewater project, and 2, to acquire a parcel of land located at 62 Route 28. Noreen.
Thank you. So after, the few discussions that we had about these articles for a special town meeting, we had voted at last meeting, and after some investigation, as surmised, the funding source does not exist. We voted for this to come out of our retained earnings, and we do not have any retained earnings right now. So certainly we can have discussion, but I'm going to make a motion that we rescind our vote of last meeting approving Article 1 for special town meeting. If I could have a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
If I can just an update on that, just with that acknowledgement that retained earnings aren't available for a special town meeting. I did reach out to legal And the appropriate motion for the town in this instance is going to be to amend the motion on the floor to change the funding source from sewer retained earnings to raise and appropriate. So that money will need to come from the savings that are going to be realized from the two school districts. One other update is that when Article 1 was submitted for special town meeting, we were still, evaluating pump station sites and locations. We've actually been able to reduce the number of pump station sites. I think the original CWMP had 6 sites. We're now down to 3 sites. So I believe we're going to be able to reduce the $70,000 figure likely around in half. I'm still waiting for the price for appraisals to come in. I'm sure I'm coordinating with the appraiser right now, which that number needs to include, but that is the update there.
So when it went from 6 to 3, who figured that out?
That's been just between GHD and myself as we've been, getting the survey data, evaluating the different locations, the different scenarios, where we have land or don't have land.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor, there's a second.
Discussion?
Discussion.
So the reason I feel we should do this is that our vote, doesn't have a large effect on what happens at town meeting. It's really the town meeting vote that would approve it or, allow that money to go. In addition to that, this article covers territories which are not specifically part of the Wastewater Commission purview. Our purview is Phase 2. These are about Phase 3, as I kind of spoke at random last time, and they're also about West Harwich. So I feel much better if we just plain wipe out our vote. Our vote isn't needed. Our vote was based on information that was not correct, and had town meeting gone ahead and voted that out of our retained earnings, it would have caused some pretty serious problems with the state that would have had to have been corrected over the course of the year. So I would like to walk away from this, and that's why I'm suggesting we rescind our vote.
Any other discussion?
Second.
We have a second. Mr. Hupp, we're having discussion. Are we all good with discussion? I'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, unanimous.
Thank you. I feel better.
So
I would also make the same, although the funding source doesn't apply for Article 2, but
I don't know that you took action on.
we did.
we did, you
Okay.
abstained.
Yeah, we did, we
Okay.
voted for it. But, I think to be clean, I would make a motion to rescind vote on Article 2 as well.
Can you make that motion to abstain?
Yeah,
Yeah?
anybody can, yep. So I would move that we rescind our vote from last meeting on Article 2.
That's the motion. Is there a second? Second.
We don't have the complication
Hold on a
with,
second.
I'm sorry,
We have a second.
yeah.
Is there any discussion? It sounds like Noreen has discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to hear
Okay.
what she has
No,
to say.
all I was gonna say is,
Just a minute.
That's right, he's got it.
You didn't have for nothing.
on Article 2, we do not have issues with the funding source, because that was coming out of, the town raise and appropriate money. But, the area is not really in the purview of the Wastewater Commission, and I think it would just be cleaner if we, rescinded our vote.
Yeah, we don't have anything to say about construction.
Right.
You're right.
Judith?
So I agree with that, but I'm also, are we as a board supposed to be supporting, if we are perceived to be in contrast to any plans that the Board of Selectmen are making, is that not beneficial for the town people?
Well,
Town peoples? I think I'm getting confused.
Yeah, so I don't think, and Noreen, please
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the issue, I think there's consensus amongst the board that it's in the town's best interest to acquire these property interests for the purpose of sewer, implementation.
Or possibly other.
Or, or other. I think what Noreen's point in this is more toward, so you're not opposing the acquisition, it's just not the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners article to support, because the board doesn't have oversight of the
presenting it.
implementation.
We're not presenting it.
So
Right.
It's the Board of Selectmen is presenting
did
it.
the Board of Selectmen request us to support this, I guess is my question.
Not formally. When I spoke with Joe, initially, he said, oh, it'd probably be good to have the Water Wastewater Commissioner support. That,
It's an
at the
add-on.
time, was when we were discussing using the Sewer Enterprise Fund. So I think,
Okay.
under that, it would make sense to the taxpayers to know that the Sewer Commission is, in agreement with that expense. In this instance, I think this board hasn't said anything to suggest they're not in favor of the property interest. The issue is primarily the funding source and that delineation of responsibility between the selectmen and the Water Wastewater Commission.
And if we don't, so I get the first one totally, right? But the second one, if we don't support that, is that going to be perceived as not supporting it?
No, we're not even listed.
Yeah,
This is
we're
by
not.
the Board of Selectmen, that's the
Okay.
thing. It's got nothing to do with us.
I
The
thought,
board is in charge of
And
construction.
just ask the
Yeah,
question.
okay.
Just
I
ask,
thought
it's a
last-
question of
No.
perception.
I thought last time at our meeting, the discussion of the parcel at 62 Route 20 was looking for our support in using a piece of that land
Yeah.
for a pump station.
Yeah.
Wasn't that what the request was, or that's what the?
Yeah, I think my request was of the board to support the siting of a pump station at 62. So for the wastewater purposes, 52 or 62 doesn't make a
Right.
difference, because it's
Yes,
opposite side of the
Pleasant
road.
Road, right.
So it was really just supporting the wastewater portion of that article, if I recall correctly.
Right. So the first one, like Judith was saying, I get the the finance part of it, the finance of it. But number two, sounds like you're just looking for us to be in favor of that parcel of land for the pumping station. Noreen?
It's a pumping station for West Harwich, which this board does not oversee. So, I mean, it's great if we give our opinion and say, gee, that sounds like a good idea, or if we vote for it individually at town meeting, but as a board, it's not our area of responsibility. They would like to hear our opinion, but we're no different in this issue than any other 5 people on the street.
And I'm asking if that is an incorrect assumption because of perception that
I mean,
this entity's been, well, we've been out like Dan, because Dan, and again, it's this straddling the two boards,
Yeah.
right? Because Dan straddles, his work covers not only the design and acceptance and funding of the project, as well as the future implementation and operation. It's still, from the general public, a perception. I don't know.
I don't read that.
You don't? Okay.
No,
I-
not at all. It starts right out, the first line, authorize the Board of Selectmen. That's who owns the cell. And the other one, the same way. See if the town will authorize the Board of Selectmen. And the articles are in by the, so regardless of what happens, there's nothing here that says anything about water and sewer. Nothing. This is the total.
Can I ask?
Noreen?
It will come out more later in the agenda in our discussion of the sewer enterprise fund, but my concern, Judith, is that the Board of Selectmen, who's in charge of these things, is starting to rely too much on our opinion on these matters that are not in our area of responsibility. Fine because of the dotted line, well, it's not fine, but for them to use Dan, and Dan supports it. But what I hear is the Board of Selectmen saying, and they haven't even asked us, our votes don't get recorded on the town warrant, so nobody really knows what we vote anyway, beyond us. It's only the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen that show in the town warrant. But at any rate...
Well, I can look up minutes, I mean...
Oh, yeah, no, I just meant on the town meeting warrant, you know.
Yeah.
But my concern is the Board of Selectmen are starting, you know, I feel, just my opinion, to say more like, well, the Board of Wastewater supported it, so we'll support it too. And that's backwards, you know, we're just 5 people. When it comes to West Harwich, we have no authority, we weren't elected to talk about that, and so that's why
I thought the Board of Selectmen was looking for our approval as a way to get the body of the town to also support this.
Did the Board of Selectmen give us these and ask us for an opinion?
No, that was just based on a conversation I had with the town administrator about, you know, hey, it's a sewer enterprise fund, you know, should probably
In Article
have this...
1.
In Article 1, should
Yeah.
probably have the sewer commission, you know, vote to support or endorse that article, given the funds. And also, part of the enterprise fund discussion, one of the things that was raised in our meeting was that town meeting is the approving entity to spend funds out of the sewer retained earnings. So it's, even if the Water Wastewater Commission voted against Article 1, just as an example, the selectmen still have the authority to put that on the warrant, and the taxpayers still have the right to vote to spend it. So, you know, with respect to Phase 3 or West Harwich, you know, those are being now coming out of the raise and appropriate, they're not coming out of the sewer enterprise. To Noreen's point, that's technically out of the purview per the charter. The funding isn't coming from sewer enterprise, so I don't think that endorsement is necessarily required, right? Because I think town meeting voters would say, hey, we're using money out of the sewer enterprise fund. If a sewer commissioner got up and said, hey, we do not approve of this funding, I think that would carry the weight at town meeting that the selectmen and sewer commission were at odds, and that would be to the taxpayers to determine. But where it's coming from raise and appropriate, I don't think that it's
So the town
necessarily
administrator asked you to bring this to get our opinion, because we can take a vote on it, and our vote doesn't hold any water, because it's not our authority.
Right.
But you're looking for our opinion to either support Article 1, which we voted to rescind just now, and now we're looking for an opinion to support Article 2 for this property located at 62 Route 28 to put a pumping station on it. That's all they're asking us to do.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's stronger than it's true. I don't think anybody has really called you and said, we really need your
No.
opinion. It was really just very casual and passive.
Yeah.
You might as well vote, you know? It wasn't...
But you don't think we should have an opinion as if we should use 62 for a pumping station?
Since we were not contacted one single time, I don't feel we've been asked, honestly, for an opinion. You know, I think it was a comment made in passing, you know, maybe by some people who weren't totally focused on a distinction of duties.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Do we have to vote on this?
No. Well,
Like
Well,
I said,
well,
I mean, is it required for us to...
So we've
even
already
take a vote?
voted, we've already voted on this.
On the
To support
second
this.
one?
Hold on a second.
Oh, sorry.
Hold on a second. We've already voted on this at our last meeting. Noreen is making a motion right now to rescind our previous vote into support of Article 1, which we just did.
Yeah.
Now she's made a motion to rescind our vote on Article 2. So the motion right now is to rescind our previous vote on Article 2.
Okay, so, okay. And I totally get number 1, but this, to me, it's like, it's going somewhere it's not. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion, just to clear anything else up?
It may be, if the board wants to, just in case the question is asked at town meeting, maybe not necessarily to support the articles themselves or the funding source, but I guess a vote of confidence or not opposition to the sites themselves or the town pursuit. You know what I'm saying? Just as a I don't know, just in case someone asks, hey, what does the wastewater commission think of the pump stations?
You know, for me,
Or it could be that's not in our purview, it's the purview of and that could be the response, but I just, whatever that is, I guess.
I understand we have no authority and no legal obligation to make it a vote or opinion on this. But as the wastewater department, it's going to affect us how we run the department and where those pump stations are. So did they come down and officially ask us for an opinion? It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like it was just done in passing, but it is here now. And I think that's the vote that you're looking for, is to rescind the previous.
Well, the current vote is to rescind it. If you want to leave your vote,
Motion, right.
you can
Right.
leave it and not rescind it.
Alan, did you have something you want to add?
well, if I said, tell me, and it came up, and they asked, my comment to the town meeting was that I'm not opposed to these
Right.
in any way, shape, or form. It's under the selectmen's purview, they're in charge of the construction.
Right.
Obviously, it's a necessity, and they're doing the right thing ahead of time.
Right. Again, my concern was the funding for Article 1, which we've already resolved that. Julie?
And my concern is if we rescind Article 2's voting that we did, that it becomes an issue. I just think we should
I
leave it.
don't see that. I can't even understand why we voted on it to begin with. This is the selectmen's article, it's gonna go, and unless we have something so outstanding, outrageous about these articles that we would raise on town meeting floor to oppose it, I don't see any.
Because I think they're looking for our support.
Well, again, they didn't ask us for us, let's be clear about that. This was a conversation between Dan and the town administrator saying, yeah, send it down there and, just get their opinion of that thought, I don't.
Yeah, and also just to note, that discussion, in this vote was born on a discussion that took place prior to retained earnings not being available.
Right.
So, I think at the time the request was more appropriate given the funding source.
I just think if we vote to rescind the support that we had voted, it's going to be seen as a double negative, and it's
But that can also,
semantics.
but that can be discussed too at town meeting, if it.
I mean, why would it even be brought up? I mean, we
I don't
voted
know.
on it, and it's I mean,
Because now we're voting on whether or
and we're
not to
just taking
rescind
that
our
vote out.
support. That's
You know
the,
what? I don't care what we do.
All right,
And
let's take a vote. Are we good to take a vote? So the motion is to rescind our vote on Article 2. All in favor of rescinding our vote on Article 2, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, is that you and I?
Yeah.
And those opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, let's move on.
So it was 3-2,
3-2.
so it carries.
All right, water restrictions and enforcement.
So just an update on where we're at to date. So far, we have issued about $50,000 worth of citations. There's over 500, about 600 occurrences that have been issued through fines. We have paid through the 27th, received $4,950.
What was that? I'm sorry.
$4,950.
Wow.
And then we have on deck another 65 citations in the amount of $4,200.
And how much time and effort has it taken to get these? How much does it cost us? Right.
So we did make a call to, for the $50 fines, to just send those regular mail, because it's $10 to send them certified. So we did send those out, so we would just be looking at $280 in, or $2,800, I believe, in certified mail, because it was about 370 or so certified mailings, around $7, $8 a piece.
And it has to be certified?
For the big ones, legal did recommend that. One other thing that I would like to just bounce off the board, I did, now the big batch of citations just went out, I believe a little over a week ago, so they're starting to hit people's mailboxes and obviously starting to get some calls from folks. One that I took this morning and told them that I would bring it in front of the board. A resident called, they were very upset. They had just received a $350 fine, which would have been for, different reports of irrigation use. Their main issue was that they didn't receive a warning notice. Now, if you recall, the rules and regulations had a first offense of the written warning, second for $100, third and subsequent for $300. We had published that on July 29th when restrictions just went into effect. So that property owner got the $350 invoice, went to our website and pulled up the 729 notification that was still citing our rules and regs that had a first warning as a written notice. So they were taking issue with that they were fined and should have got a first notice, and they would have turned it off having been made aware by written notice. I did bring up that we did do the voice broadcast, advertise it in the newspaper, put the digital signboards out. We've made a number of attempted communications with the public in that the time to turn the irrigation system off would have been on the 1st when restrictions went into effect. But they were expressing it was...
So the homeowners saying they didn't know that there was a water restriction going on? That they shouldn't have.
I don't know that they said they didn't know that there was a restriction. I think they were willingly violating it until they received a written notice.
Well, they can file an abatement if they have a disagreement with it, in my opinion, so.
The one thing that I, just where they were referencing that July 29th notice that was in conflict with the bylaw, just where that was a component of the discussion. Just wanted to, that was part of their argument, if you will.
What was the date the state mandated for the Cape?
I believe it was July 27th, I think, because we met the day after. And it went into effect on August 1st.
What's the discrepancy that they're saying?
That
when they got their...
They should have got a written notice instead of a...
But they went back to the website and referenced a date.
The news posting from July 29th from the original advertisement that, when we were thinking we were operating under the rules and regs.
Right.
So they were saying, we should have got a notice. We didn't get a notice. We would have turned it off.
Right.
I know everybody's been going crazy trying to put this all into operation, and it's new to so many new things. But let's say somebody didn't get a warning notice. In the future, do we think they might have gotten like a bill for like 100 and then like a second 100? You know what I'm saying? Is part of this because some were accumulated? And so is he saying his very first notice of anything was this $350 bill?
Well, and I guess this is part of kind of the discussion I had with them this morning. I pushed back and said that was not the first notice. The notice was on August 1st when the signboards were out and the voice broadcast.
Right. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, at this point, there's nothing we can do at this point anyway, and they can file for an abatement.
Right.
Well, it would be they'd have to request a hearing. That's, for the citations, that's the next step.
A hearing at the courthouse?
Yeah, the courthouse.
I guess that's the next step. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it right now. It's already been mailed.
Right.
Can one of us, if you don't have enough staff or time in your calendar, can one of us as a commissioner go to the courthouse? Or does it need?
Yeah, I believe it could be me or any one of the board members. That said, I was informed by the, I believe it's the detective at the police department, that they're all done through Zoom. So if I won't actually have to go, I can do it through Zoom, which will make it a little bit more streamlined.
Be happy to help and schedule him.
You know, I think we're gonna have a dozen of these weird situations, and if we were like the city of Boston, we'd probably have 500 of them. And I think a lot of them are gonna be gray, and we just have to work our way through them till especially the beginning of next year when we have a broader program.
Yes.
We did take that down this morning, just as a,
Take what down?
the language that was in that July 29th post that referenced the first written warning.
Right.
That was in there up until today, because we hadn't gone back to the July 29th posting.
But there's nothing wrong with sending a written warning anyway. I mean, we could do it in addition, it's just that this customer is saying they didn't receive it for
Right.
whatever reason.
But he had gotten, I mean, $300, it's more than one time.
Right.
No.
So he received more than one bill.
That was all on one bill.
Right, that's what I was
yeah,
wondering
sure,
out.
yeah. I thought it was separate. If it was separate, then I could see.
Was there an update from legal in the state? So if the state makes their rulings, that it also includes wells, private wells?
So I have reached out to legal, I guess that's the last thing I want to touch on this.
Sorry.
Just a couple of questions about the bylaw change, also inquiring about private well enforcement. So I haven't heard back from them yet, but the question's been asked at this point. Thanks.
All right, so water restrictions and enforcement. I mean, at some point, we're gonna have to come and to deal with enforcement of this. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's a conversation to, I'd say, keep on the agenda, because if people are just gonna pay fines, it's not really the point of paying the fine. The point is to conserve the water, and we'll have to come up with some ideas as far as enforcement.
Yeah, I think once legal gets replies, hopefully that should lay out a more clear path as to
All right.
what we need to do.
Anything else with water restrictions enforcement?
Not on that.
All right, new business, revenue.
Bye, Tim.
All right, so in the packet is a printout from the September bills that were just issued. I have another document to supplement that with, if you could take one and pass it down. So revenue from for the water enterprise for first billing quarter of FY23 totaled $1.717 million. Of that, if you flip to the second page, for water rate revenue specifically, the second page that was in the packet material, the actual revenue from water consumption itself was $1.665 million. And if on the sewer, we had revenue in the amount of $4,580. So what I wanted to go over, and I just put this together this morning, is kind of a summary.
I got 3 pages
Oh.
there.
Sorry, you're only supposed to have one.
Which one, just this one?
Just that one, yeah.
All right.
So what I looked at this morning that wasn't included in the packet was just trying to get a better understanding of what impact the water restrictions may have on revenue for this fiscal year. Only having one billing quarter being July through September, this is our biggest revenue quarter of the season. So the FY23 budget, looking at the sheet I just handed out, the top box of numbers was the revenue that we had anticipated when developing the FY23 budget, which was based upon the second table, which was what I had put together when we were developing the alternative G revenue projections during the rate increase. So you can see we're totaling, I think it's just a rounding, we had 4.348 million on the munis budget, and then we had 4.37 million on the alternative G spreadsheet that we'd previously done. Going down to the last column, I'm sorry, still in the middle column. If you look to the one all the way to the left, quarter one revenue, you see we were originally anticipating 1.962 million for quarter one, and we collected 1.665, bringing us about 297,000 less than we had projected. That said, that will be partially offset by the 60 or so thousand that will be hopefully coming in from the water ban citations. And one other, I guess, overall comment is that when we develop the budgets and anticipate or project revenues, we have historically been doing that based off of what we would consider a wet summer. So we generally fluctuate anywhere from 100 million gallons between a wet year and a dry year. So the total annual gallons that we were originally anticipating for FY23 on the low confidence estimate was 685 million gallons, sorry. So that's what we built our budget based upon. Now looking back at prior year pumping volumes, 2017, as of September 19th, when we read our meters for this quarter, had pretty much the exact same usage. So we had 569 million gallons in 2022, and we had, I believe it was 565 million gallons in 2017. So to try to estimate impacts for the remainder of the calendar year, I pulled forward the 2017 data from September through December, and using that, I'm estimating that we'll pump around 699 million gallons this year. So I believe, based on that, where we had budgeted based on 685 million, that we're still going to be okay from a revenue perspective for FY23 from the water ban. So that was kind of a run-on sentence, but
Can you say that again?
going to need to continue monitoring, but
What about, and I know probably not much is used, but quarter four on the other end?
Yeah.
Say, if we have to start spring without outside water,
yeah,
then that might put us lower.
yeah, to June.
Right.
That's the one unknown at this point.
Right.
We're going to have to kind of, and it may be worthwhile to just put a placeholder article in
Yeah.
Springtown meeting, depending on how things are looking when we get to assembling the warrant. If we do, if we are in the situation May and June of next year, if we do need a transfer from retained earnings to balance, I don't foresee that at this point, but we can monitor. If we do, we would need town meeting action, so we may want to consider as we get closer a potential article
Okay.
that looks like it.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you
So
for
that-
all the stuff.
That'll bring us into the capital plan.
All right. So included in the packet, and this is purely looking at the water side of the operation, I had included the capital outlay submittal forms that went in for this year's capital budget, and I also included the 11/17 that has the 10-year capital plan that the board voted, I want to say it was before John and Noreen came on, and I had just kind of updated that with some revised numbers, and wanted to go over that with the board. So I think the easiest place to look is the big one.
So 28 water main replacement one? I
Yeah,
can't believe that number.
well, and I have some updates on that, but
It was 7 when we started.
All right, so just to highlight the big changes between the old 10-year and the new. On the old plan, we were anticipating we'd be going into construction for the new well up in North Harwich. We're not there yet. There's still about $600,000 of engineering work that needs to be done, which includes the prolonged pump test, where they install a bigger diameter well and they have to pump it with under supervision with DEP, and that's what determines the final approved pumping volume for the well. So that's the next big step in that project.
Excuse me, are we on the 14,000?
I was just
I'm
looking
sorry,
at
okay, go ahead, I got
that.
lost.
So these
Oh, okay.
are all on this with the exception of FY '28.
Okay, no, I got lost.
All right, moving on. So also big change, obviously, as Gary just noted, the cost increase for the Route 28 water main replacement project. So this number, and just to give you an understanding of where the 14 million is from, that was a number that was submitted on the project evaluation form to DEP for the State Revolving Loan Fund. Now, I just had a meeting with DOT yesterday. We did a big site walk through the whole of 28 to discuss west of the Herring River Bridge. Right now, or up until this point, we were intending to do the sewer and the water work prior to DOT paving. DOT comes in behind us. What DOT offered yesterday that will come at considerable savings to the town is, instead of us doing it before them, GHD can provide them with all the CAD files of the water main. They'll actually include it within their contract drawings and scope of work, and we'll just be a non-participatory entity. Once the bids come in, they give us, a price for the pipe. We cut them a check. They oversee it with the DOT inspector. We don't have, at least I can say with certainty, by partnering or by doing it within their project, we don't have to do controlled density fill or flowable fill, at least west of the Herring River. The controlled density fill or flowable fill, it's like an excavatable concrete that they make you put in the ground to prevent settling. So that, within that 14 million, was over $2 million of cost, was just that excavatable concrete material. So we'll be able to eliminate that from at least that half of the project and should get some real savings on construction oversight and installation.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why do they,
Why is DOT doing this?
It's not well, one of the things that led to that conclusion, if you will, my question to DOT in that meeting was, ductile iron pipe's 50 weeks out. It's a year out. They were looking to put their project on the street to bid in February of '24. So if we ordered the pipe today, we would get it the end of next September, and we would have from October to February to install a new water main and a collection system. By putting the pipe, and we're talking about delaying their project, and then the conversation turned to, well, if they include it as a component of their project, any delay that would result from supply chain or otherwise would not be on the town, it would be on DOT. So it would kind of force them to wait until our work got done to do the paving. It's not uncommon. We also have a non-participatory project on Azalea Drive. DOT is replacing the bridge that goes, is it Hinckley's Pond right there? I'm looking at you.
The little bridge on Azalea?
Yeah.
Over the Herring River.
Yeah, so the one that goes there is getting replaced. We're going to be on the hook for about $50,000 of that project. That we're going to run dual 12-inch mains under the Azalea Drive Bridge, so that if we can connect from North Harwich through the woods there to the back, that will carry a 16 all the way out to Pleasant Lake. So that's another. So it's not uncommon that there's non-participatory components to DOT projects. In all honesty, we've been trying to coordinate with them, but DOT isn't always the easiest to get a hold of or get a return call. So this face-to-face meeting was the first opportunity we really had to
That's
kind of
great.
dig
Yeah.
in. So there's gonna be changes to that as we move forward, and start to get some more information, but
Any information on the funds for infrastructure?
so the one tidbit that I've got since, I guess really the only thing I've heard since, Mark Drainville from GHD was on another presentation that they had said they're going to be diverting portions of the infrastructure bill and granting an additional 7.5% principal forgiveness on top of the disadvantaged community program that currently exists. So depending on if we're tier 1 or tier 2, it's going to be 3.3, 6.6, or 13, I think, percent, plus an additional 7.5 on top.
Great.
My understanding is when they issue the intended use plan this winter, they'll also notify us of anticipated principal forgiveness at that time. So we should have a better understanding as we get February, March, as to what that's going to look like.
Okay.
Just two little things. Your plan here says 14,000, your request says 14,700. So,
Hopefully it's going to be closer to 7.
I'm sorry? No.
Yeah, that was oversight on my part.
Okay, yeah, so it is 14,700. 14,700,000 at the moment. And so these two, the second two down have
Wait a
changed.
second, I'm confused.
The
14 million, what's 14,700,000?
the capital.
Oh, on
I
that
had
page, I'm not looking at that page.
typo on that.
All right. And so the second two down in FY24 have increased or changed, so I assume that's gonna somehow go through the capital outlay process of things that have changed.
Yeah, and
okay.
that's, those forms have been submitted to capital outlay. There was a meeting, what's today? I think there's a meeting on the 30th of this month
Right.
where Joe's going to be meeting with them, and then there's going to be 2 follow-up meetings with department heads to go over capital requests.
Judith,
Just a quick question, maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but when you said azalea, I'm wondering if this is an opportunity to also, forgive my non-engineering, like to dig a future trench for a possible outfall pipe? Not outfall, what am I? We were looking at different sites for,
Effluent recharge?
Effluent, thank you.
I don't know.
I mean, if you're
That I don't
having
think-
conversations with Z, do you know what I mean? I mean, so dig once as opposed to
It's in a different spot.
different spots?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
never mind, just heard the azalea.
You know,
sorry.
while you're talking about azalea, it's too bad they couldn't put in a gas line.
They did approach them.
Really?
I believe, yeah, there was communication with the gas company. It stops, as I understand it, up at the fork.
Right, they won't go into the bridge, it's too much money to deal with conservation.
You're
They
gonna
wouldn't.
directional bore though, right?
No, we're gonna, right now, there is currently a directionally drilled line under the bridge. And then we're gonna have them run dual 12-inch underneath the deck, and we're gonna try to keep all of them active.
And how will we get home, we who live beyond the bridge?
That is a question for COC.
Maybe a canoe.
No, they usually do half and half.
It's an awful little bridge to do half and half.
The new one's gonna be wider.
Oh, okay, all right.
How often is traffic there?
Think about the bridge up in Yarmouth there, that went under the little stream there by the old Yarmouth Drive-In
Yeah,
for years. I mean, it was crazy. And they put all that new bridge in, half and half.
yeah,
But,
okay.
yeah, on 28 stubs off the sewer main. Does that happen?
Yes. So what we're looking to do, and so I'm trying to make sure we have every possible contingency we need. So for the sewer, what we're talking about right now is not only running the services to all the properties, but also at select cross streets, putting a sleeve in so that we can get under 28. And then I'm also exploring potentially getting a piece of force main stubbed out from the bridge and off to the parking lot on the west side of the Heron River, so that if we needed to pump east instead of north, that would already be underneath 28 and into the bridge abutment, so that we're covered.
Yeah. I like it. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I apologize, I need to leave.
That's okay, I understand.
All right, jumping back in, I forgot to highlight this one yellow, the backhoe replacement for FY25. Still looking to replace the backhoe, but looking to replace it with a small loader instead of a backhoe, so that's just to note. I did also for FY25 increase the vehicle replacement, just based on the prices that we're getting now for trucks. I don't think we're gonna be able to replace 2 vehicles for $75,000 in 2025. So,
I've got an old minivan if you want.
We might take it. Sorry.
I apologize, I need to go.
That's all right, thank you, Judith.
Sorry.
Now you got more room down that way.
another new addition, the FY25 distribution system upgrades. I put that in as a placeholder based on the town meeting article that we submitted last year, pending infrastructure bill. So I left it in FY25. I don't know that we can take on Route 28 water, sewer, Phase 3, and Great Sand Lakes, and another one. So I would leave some room for movement on that, recommend leaving room for movement on that one. And then the last change that I didn't include in the capital submission forms, and I did that because last time we discussed relocating the headquarters here, there was consensus that we would rather stay at this location than the Queen Anne across from the DPW. That said, what I wanted to just talk about today is if we want to still try to budget in the future for improvements at this facility, consider a space building so we can park all the equipment in, indoors or something like that.
Didn't we have funds that were supposed to be available to us specifically to do like an upgrade? When we first had that discussion? I think it was like $600,000 or something?
That was, I believe, originally was the ARPA money.
Right.
There was $616,000 earmarked to the town from the first port, I think 10 million or so that was allocated. That has since been, I guess, committed to the Great Sand Lakes project.
Okay. All right.
So,
That's good.
this is, there are obviously new additions, trying to include discussions we've been having over the last year or so. The last time we looked at this, I believe it was supposed to be a majority vote or a unanimous vote to amend it.
Right.
We don't have to do it today. We could keep it on for next meeting, so Judith's present as well.
Right.
If you want to continue the discussion too, I could also pull our 2012 30-year master plan if we want to try to see what other projects may be worth considering, or we could consider this as presented or amended in a future meeting, and then start to look at maybe redoing our comprehensive master plan for the department and do a full upgrade in the next year or so.
I'd rather, let's just hold on to this for now and keep the 10 years. Let us think about this one when all 5 of us are here. We can take a vote. I just can't believe the price of the thing right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to knock them down. I don't want to speak too
What's that?
negatively. The prices, just with
Some
the
of the stuff's
DOT.
coming down. material's gonna
fuel
start to
going
come
down, so, well, for now.
No, it's just a good outline, you know?
All right. Capital and Sewer Enterprise Fund.
You want to take the lead? You want me to take the lead?
I'll take it.
All right.
So this is on the agenda as a result of our discussion at the previous meeting, but also Dan and I and Sandy had a meeting to go over some of the issues on our new sewer enterprise fund and specifically our retained earnings out of sewer enterprise. And what we learned in talking is that, you know, it just started just because I had a feeling of discomfort, that we were getting into things that weren't part of our responsibility. And from our meeting, it kind of confirmed, you know, what we thought. So what I'm saying is that, you know, right now, we have this bundle of money for wastewater, and every year the town gives us more for that money, because our users can't support it. But now the town has started to pick, you know, cherry pick certain projects and say, you know, that they should come out of our funds. And that bothered me. So what I feel is happening is I feel our responsibilities and eventually our funds are starting to be commingled. And even though we're living on their gifts in terms of subsidies right now, commingling is never a good direction to go in or thing to do. We should keep these things straight from day one, even if they give us $1 million every year. So with that said, and that was referring back to some of the papers I showed you last meeting about, you know, our charter saying clearly that the Board of Selectmen is without question in charge of design and construction, absolutely without question. But also then, when we wrote our first sewer enterprise article, like anything we write new in the town, there was some ambiguity, because we didn't know, you know, what was going to happen in 5 years and exactly, you know, how that was going to be done. So there's some gray material in there. But right now, this minute sitting here, I don't think the Board of Selectmen has any of these concerns. You know, and I think we as a board have to be very careful about overseeing this fund and our duties before we wind up spread, you know, all over town. So Dan and I had talked after our meeting, and certainly can take any route, but one route might be to invite our liaison down here to have a discussion, to lead to eventually having a joint discussion with both boards, the Board of Selectmen as well as our board, to discuss some of these issues. You know, like one would be, you know, gee, folks, you know, what made you think you were going to pay for that project out of sewer retained earnings? It's over here, and, you know, so it's not a topic I love, but, you know, it started because I heard something. I overheard something watching the Board of Selectmen's meeting on TV when they mentioned our retained earnings. And, you know, we need to ensure that people give us the proper notice, that they know that's their department. We need like a firewall between our enterprise fund and their money. So, happy to listen to any other thoughts, but just started out of a feeling of discomfort.
Dan, do you want to add to that?
Well, I think there was a couple, I guess, specific questions that we asked that I think we've kind of talked about tonight.
That's
or
true.
this morning, whatever time it is. You know, one of which was, does the board need to vote in support of an article funded from sewer enterprise or not? And Mark had said, the only one who can appropriate money from the sewer enterprise is town meeting. So, in essence, no. But that it's only town meeting who can appropriate it. So, just going back to, requirement of whether we need to support or not. I think there may be perception, reasons to or not to, but from a fiscal management perspective, there isn't.
I left out the whole section, you're right, on documents, that entire section. That was another feeling of discomfort is, when the funds come from our enterprise fund, I only say our, it's the ratepayers to keep it straight, but who is the signer on those contracts? We've had some back and forth about the Board of Selectmen feeling they have to sign documents, which we've already signed, and, we need to clear up some of these processes, even though we're in the very beginning. The one for recharge areas last spring, I believe we signed it, but then Giorgio told the Board of Selectmen that they also had to sign it, and it was coming from our fund. So I don't know what the right way is anymore. I'm getting confused, But that would be a big thing, is the documents.
Okay.
But I don't know, are you guys feeling any overlapping?
I don't know, because I haven't had the opportunity to be involved. I haven't seen anything that required us to, appropriate money for something on sewer. And the only thing that I've seen so far is strictly water. So,
Well, except for that Article 1 that they put in.
articles, that's all different.
Okay, yeah.
And the recharge contract, right? And I think in that,
Right.
could partially on me, admittedly, right? So, walking the tightrope
Yep.
between the two, and, I guess with respect to the 60,000 for that contract itself, I guess thinking about it now, having talked to Mark, town meeting already appropriated the 60,000
Right.
within the professional services line item of the sewer enterprise fund. I was under the impression that as overseers of the sewer enterprise, it should be the sewer commission as signing authority on the contract. What Giorgio's point was is that due to the nature of the work and its relation to the CWMP, the selectmen should be the ones signing that because of that charter requirement, even though the funding is coming from sewer enterprise fund, which is, it's that weird.
Yeah, one thing we've got cooking is Dan's overseeing
Right,
the project on the water front.
right. Well, the other, in terms of mistakes, I would feel I made a mistake about the funding for Article 1, except for that, all I did was overhear it on a tape, listening to the Board of Selectmen, and I guess that wasn't enough for me to remember that second, wait a minute, that's not part of our commission's job, so I mean, I think the communication has to be really reinforced, where if somebody's intending to spend sewer retained earnings or any type of enterprise fund, if they could contact our chair, then we could consider approving it rather than me listening to meetings.
But, we don't have any say, because the selectmen have retained control of construction.
Right.
That's cut and dry. So whatever's there for sewer, it's in their purview, it's in.
I don't agree with that.
Out of retained earnings, though?
No, I'm not the retained earnings. I never saw how that was set up.
But that was out of retained earnings.
How did you
Article
say
one.
it set, retain what?
Pardon me?
Did retain earnings say water?
It said wastewater.
Did it say water?
No.
Water, wastewater?
It said sewer enterprise retained earnings, to be exact.
I don't see that as giving us the authority.
I'm not following you, Alan, I'm
Well,
sorry.
we may be set up as water, wastewater, by a change. But as far, and even in the article that set it up, the selectmen were retaining the development of
Right.
wastewater. That article comes under them. It
Right.
doesn't come under us.
I don't understand what we're disagreeing about. I agree
Well,
with you,
You're commenting about them spending money out of it,
right?
but we don't even keep track of the article.
What am I missing? I mean, it's our money saved from our winter, not ours, ratepayers, saved from our enterprise process. So if somebody is gonna come in and take a piece for some other purpose than what we've budgeted for and saved for, I don't think that's appropriate.
Where did the revenue come from? The hookups? Where did the revenue?
Well, see, that's the technical part. Right now, it comes from a town subsidy. But just because it
This
comes,
comes from the general fund.
right,
Okay.
but just because it comes from a town subsidy, I don't feel that they have
Did it say the proponent of the article was wastewater selectmen?
No,
Did it say selectmen, the article?
selectmen.
End of story.
I don't get the end of the story there.
But the original proposed funding source was sewer retained earnings,
Yeah,
So,
which is,
but it has nothing to do with us. We don't account for that article. We don't have any authority to spend from that.
so money was appropriated from the general fund,
Yeah,
if I'm following this right.
Right.
Let's just say $100,000,
Yeah.
to make it easy for me. Money was appropriated from the general fund and put into a line item in the wastewater sewer enterprise
so
fund.
it's not an article. It's a budget item.
Is it a budget item?
which one are we talking about?
Right.
If we're talking about the effluent recharge, it was a budget. If we're talking about Article 1 and 2 at town meeting, or Article 1 rather, that was proposed to be paid from sewer retained earnings.
I thought we were just talking in general, like hypothetically speaking. If money is taken out of the general fund and put into a line item for the sewer department for construction or maintenance for the sewer department.
It would be for, like, he writes the list of all the chemicals, the
Right.
IMA payments,
So what you're
professional
saying
services.
is the board, select board, can't use that $100,000 for phase 1 in West Harwich.
That's what
what
I'm
you're saying.
saying.
That's what she's saying.
Yeah.
You're saying they can.
I don't see why you can't. It's under that.
Well, if it's in the general fund, and they want to use $100,000 for whatever they're doing in West Harwich for the construction of the sewer, that's fine. But I feel as though once that money has been assigned and delegated to a line item in the sewer department, then that's our control.
Let me try, I agree, but can I
Is that what
try
you're
it a
saying?
different way? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what it sounds like is that we just sit down with the board of selectmen and iron out these differences. What part is our part and what part is their part? And if it comes down to construction, it's their part.
Right.
If it comes down to maintenance and routine, it's our part. So there should be,
No,
it should be spelled out in the.
How much money is being put into the sewer enterprise fund right now on a yearly basis? Is it,
$500,000.
so we have that $500,000 in
The
the
operating
budget?
Yeah.
And that money is for maintaining the enterprise, the sewer department.
Phase 2.
But it's not to be used to be.
For construction.
Right.
Does it say that?
Well, in
Is
the
it
charter, it
restricted?
says they're in charge of construction.
But that should be out of the general fund.
Right, correct.
Yeah, it's not spelt out in any document that I'm aware of.
Can I?
Yeah.
All right, let me try a different point of view, okay? So if we had, right now, 1,000 users in Phase 2, we would have from them enough money to pay for our IMA, to pay for the professional services of Phase 2, and everything else. So in that situation, when we weren't getting a subsidy from the town anymore, when we were just operating based on our connected users things, what if somebody came along and took 100,000 from us to use in West Harwich?
number one, I would think the 100,000 would have to be an appropriation at town meeting.
Okay,
So at that point, I mean, you just can't take 100,000 and without having some authorization.
right,
So it's gonna come out, it's gonna be spelled out.
I got a good,
That's the point where you question that spending.
yeah.
I got a good
All right,
analogy.
go ahead, go for it.
So, let's forget about wastewater for a second.
Ah,
Thank
yeah,
God.
good, good. We're all better.
In this situation, we're talking about the Water Enterprise Fund, right? So,
Okay.
Good,
say the affordable housing folks decide they want to build a subdevelopment with 100 houses on it. I guess my analogy would be, it would be as if the Board of Selectmen appropriated $2 million to be paid from this water enterprise to install the water main
right,
without the Water Commission's approval.
that's right, that's what I'm trying to say.
So that's on the,
I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
And that's under our control. And the way it's spelled out. But we haven't, as near as I can see, we have never sat down with the Board of Selectmen and made it cut and dry. What part we play?
so in my understanding is the MGL that establishes the enterprise fund, and I have to find the language, I know I've read it at least once, is the sewer commissioners are the responsible entity for overseeing the sewer enterprise fund. Unless there is no sewer commission, it then defaults to the Board of Selectmen acting as sewer commissioners. So by Mass General Law, it's your cookie jar, essentially, right? That should be retained for buying a generator or replacing a pump that they're now using out of scope, if you will, to purchase the land for a pump station in a different phase. So I think it's just clarifying in black and white that capital appropriations for the construction of collection systems or other related activities are done out of the general fund, and that the, appropriation of money for sewer O&M is done from the sewer enterprise. I think that would clarify.
Well, like I say, we just sit down and clear it up and put it on track the way it should be, so that we do participate, so we know what's going on. At this point, they're just building it, and they take the money wherever. I mean, I think we need to make it known. Instead of sitting there, I mean, we need to resolve early on, now.
Yeah.
We just started.
That's right, that's
Good
how I
point.
feel.
So we need to get together with the board, make a list of issues, sit down, and let's get them resolved.
Let's call them concerns.
Can I add one other thing?
Sure.
She's learning
Control. Allison, Doreen, go ahead. Doreen.
What I think will help, but it also would be good to speak about it and iron it out, is, every town has a different style with how they appropriate large projects. What we have done traditionally is we appropriate right to the penny. If it's our contract for construction or design or whatever, there's not much extra room in there. So when we have small things come up, like easements or things under 100, we don't have a proper source for it. But last May, we created, and I'll probably get the language wrong, but the special fund wastewater, something or other, and that was going to automatically be funded by part of the money from the short-term rental increase. And I actually thought about suggesting we use that this fall, but I don't know the rules on, does it have to go a full year first or anything else. But at any rate, that fund will be under the Board of Selectmen, and then they will have a source. I mean, I would think that amount of money might be equivalent to about $300,000, or it could be way off.
Chunk.
Because housing is getting 25%, wastewater is getting 25% in that fund. But then they'll have a source for these smaller things that come up to use, but I still think it's important that they understand that they just can't reach around and take money and responsibility, I don't
get
know.
where you're
I'm
coming
bothered.
from. I do get
I
where
think
you're
I get both sides, I get both of what you're saying. I think we should have a conversation and just clarify, like, what exactly, get rid of the gray area, what's black and white,
Right.
let's
Yeah.
put it down in writing,
As much as
so we
we
all
can.
understand where the funds are, how it's being funded
Amen.
and where.
Yeah. Instead of sitting here beating it up.
Instead of normally beating us up.
Yeah.
Okay, it's all
Okay, I
Alan's
see what you're
fault.
saying.
He let me speak. It's his fault.
He did let you speak.
So what would be our next actions?
I think, I guess I would look to pull the charter sections, that presently define the relationship, and,
I gave
Maybe.
it to you.
yeah, and I guess
Yeah,
propose, or some language to clarify.
We only want to ask Michael to come in to discuss, what we're going to have him come in for? You was your idea, have him come in to discuss?
no.
I think it was
Oh,
this,
this.
yeah, this,
Oh,
yeah.
All right, so let's just have Michael come in, have a conversation, and see where we're at that point. If there's
Okay,
any less confusion at that point. And then have, if needed, have a joint conversation with the board.
And maybe we could sit down with the language and,
try to write
Try
out
to,
something, some bullets maybe?
yeah, at least
talking
identify
things?
sections for
Okay.
consideration.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So maybe we
It's
don't,
been written up so I can give it to Michael, so he's prepared at least to
Right.
come in and talk about it.
and quite honestly, I would prefer if these discussions were after town meeting, only because there's so many issues going on with town meeting that, plus our easements. So in between now and then, Dan and I will whip off some talking points.
Sounds good.
In your spare time.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks, for listening. It's a boring topic.
You're in charge,
Oh,
man,
it's
so.
good, it's good, it's good.
I feel we're going in the wrong
Yeah.
direction from the beginning.
Get on the road.
All right,
Get them squared away early.
Okay.
let's move on to our superintendent's report.
Just a couple updates. We are going to be starting the borings for the Phase 3 sewer area. At the end of October, they said October 31st, so it's likely going to be that Monday, or first week in November. Right now, I have to reach out and coordinate rights of entry with all the abutters to the boring locations on private roads, because the private roads, the property lines go to the center line, so we need permission to drill in the street. I know I already touched on it, the meeting with DOT yesterday. Information is going to be forthcoming. I don't have much to add to what we've already discussed. I am planning to attend the Board of Selectmen's meeting on Monday to give an update for pretty much all things wastewater.
The third?
On the 3rd, yeah.
All right.
And then just an update on sewer connections. We have sent 461 order to connect letters. The remaining 50 or so will be in Continental and Whitta now that that's wrapped up. We have 27 connected and 27 in process. And
How did those connections go and everything?
I haven't heard anything negative,
Okay.
so.
All right.
461 was the, what, able to connect?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can I have this?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's all I have for today.
All
I
right.
do have a contract that was approved at the last meeting for well 4 that I got back from the finance director and signed copy from the vendor, so if the board could sign before taking off today. it'd be
Do we have
great.
that?
Yeah.
Anything from the commissioners? Mr. Thompson,
Oh, good.
Ms. Donahue,
I do have something.
do you would?
I don't usually. Usually I get them while I'm doing the
Not
meeting.
today, I had a feeling.
No, actually, I got several phone calls, this really isn't our purview, but about Article 2. And so, just to let the superintendent know, since he may very well be asked to speak on it, there's a lot of discomfort in the town about, are we gonna wind up with another derelict building, you know, so just so we would be clear for that. And I continue to get questions about why, I'm just letting you know, I mean, who knows what will happen at town meeting, but, about, you know, why couldn't we have just kept the West Harwich School as opposed to 52 in front of it? You know, I've told people that was too far, but that's the extent of my technical ability, so you don't really have to give them all to me, I'm just letting you know those will be likely town meeting questions.
Yeah, and just one thing I did forget to note, I did record a podcast with Emily over at the library, which is now live, discussing Article 1, so
Okay.
there's information out there on that. So
All right.
people are looking for it.
All right. Mr. Goff. All right. Next meeting.
I forgot my calendar. Oh,
September, right?
it's September, I
Oh,
got
we did
October here.
October.
I got October.
All right, so going into October, stick with Wednesday. Wednesday's good after everybody? Want to look at the 12th?
I'm okay with it.
Is that fine with everybody?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Same bat time?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.